President Trump has launched his Gaza Board of Peace, a global initiative designed to address conflicts. But there's no mention of Gaza in its 11-page charter. Many European nations have already rejected the president's request to join. So can this board really help the people of Gaza? Hello and welcome to Roundtable. I'm Enda Brady. Now, $1 billion. That's how much President Trump is demanding countries must pay if they want to become permanent members of his new Board of Peace. Of the 60 countries invited to sign up, more than 30 already have. But critics worry the board could have a broader mandate that may rival the United Nations.
Donald J. Trump.
Unveiled as global leaders met in Davos, the US president's new international organization that aims to bring peace to the world.
We can do numerous other things. Once this board is completely formed, we can do pretty much whatever we want to do, and we'll do it in conjunction with the United Nations. You know, I've always said the United Nations has got tremendous potential, has not used it.
As chairman of the board, Trump has invited 60 countries and over 30 have agreed to join, all expected to pay $1 billion for permanent membership. Originally, it was designed to oversee the reconstruction of Gaza, but its remit has since shifted to address conflicts worldwide. There is also controversy over who is and who isn't a part of it. Despite Gaza being central to the idea, there is no Palestinian representative and Israel has signed up, raising concerns as to whether the board would serve the interests of Palestinians. An issue echoed by the Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez, who alongside major European powers, France, UK and Germany, have rejected Trump's invitation to join.
This board is outside the framework of the United Nations and has not included the Palestinian Authority. The future of Gaza, nor the future of the West Bank, let's not forget, the future of Palestine as a whole must be led by the Palestinians.
France and Germany argue it could undermine the United Nations, while the UK is questioning Russia's involvement.
I obviously have concerns about Putin being on a board of peace. He is waging war on a European country.
White House advisor and son-in-law of Trump, Jared Kushner, will sit on the executive board alongside the US Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, and the UK's former Prime Minister, Tony Blair. Trump has promised to end decades of suffering with the Board of Peace, but critics argue it is less to do with peace in Gaza or elsewhere, but more of a transparent power grab by the US president.
Well, let's meet our guests for this one. Joining me in the studio, I'm delighted to say we have Tom Rivers. He's a former correspondent for ABC News Radio in London. And we have Zizette Darkazally. She is a former UN advisor and an associate fellow of the Middle East and North Africa programme at Chatham House. And joining us from Kent in England, we have Shahid Hamouri, a Palestinian and Jordanian lecturer in international law and legal theory. That's at the University of Kent. You're all very welcome to this roundtable. Zizette, to you first of all, I've read the Charter of Rights for this board, 11 pages, not one mention of Gaza in the Charter. What does that tell us?
A lot. So if we go back, take a one step back and remember when did the Board of Peace, when was it introduced for the first time? The Trump plan that was introduced in 29th of September last year. The Board of Peace was presented as a transitional international entity that will deal with the future of Gaza post-ceasefire. So it was transitional and it was all about Gaza. What we saw in Davos that was announced was an international entity that had nothing to do with Gaza, and also it does not sound like it is transitional. So my understanding is that the board sees itself as an entity that transcends Gaza, that deals with different conflicts, and Gaza perhaps is the pilot.
Let's bring Tom in. Tom, there is a theory that this is all about Trump wanting to replace the United Nations. Is that even possible?
You know, I don't think it is, but it is fascinating. The wording that we heard in Davos, because we're all focusing on Gaza, as we saw going back to September, if you will, putting the flesh on the paper in December, very, very quick. And then the announcement in the lion's den amongst the globalists in Davos. And that was by design. And to come forward then and to say, yes, this is about Gaza, but we want to work with the UN and also independently. So we're looking at a very different thing that's going to be evolving before our very, very eyes. And, you know, we talked about this just before we got in here. There have been ad hoc arrangements in the past. You remember, and not only was it Afghanistan was NATO, but Iraq was coalition of the willing. We've had a coalition of the willing in Ukraine. So this kind of structures have been around in the past. So yes, wait and see. I'm on the fence as to whether this thing is going to survive beyond the administration of Trump or not, because we really don't know what other areas might it get interested in down the road. Watch this space.
Thanks, Tom. Let's bring in Shahid. Shahid, to you, how do you think Palestinians are feeling about this? So many countries talking about them, making decisions for them, and Palestine has not even been invited to join.
Well, this feels like more or less of a satirical, very, very bad joke. I do not know. It's farcical, to say the least. To begin with, we have 2 years of genocide, of unimaginable pain that ends in the weirdest way possible without facilitating any space for any redress, a complete overhaul of international law and its whole principles. And even the passing of the UN Security Council resolution was something that will historically go down as a very dark moment in history, where the nations of the world decided to come and create something that's extra legal, outside the parameters of anything that humanity has ever agreed on. And in this case, what is happening is that Palestinian technocrats are being invited on the ground, which is more or less selling Gaza as a corporation. I think by now people have lost hope in anything that will materialize, and they're really afraid of what's going to happen, being referred to as workers, as well as primarily cheap labor in a real estate plan by Trump and his son-in-law, is a very dark future that we all cannot even start to see how it will materialize. Also, that lacks any premises of sustainability or engagement or understanding of what on earth is Gaza. It's a very resilient place that will refuse any of these wild imaginaries to be applied on them.
Thank you. Zizette, I want to look at some words the president said in Davos about this board. And he said, once this board is completely formed, we can do pretty much whatever we want to do. Sounds ominous.
Look, it does. We live in a world where the US is an indispensable actor when it comes to the Middle East, but it's also unpredictable. And it's a very, very difficult environment to operate in. It is, you're right, that there is question marks about what the mandate would be, what the scope of work of the Board of Peace would be. It's not, even the charter isn't telling much about how this is going to happen. The reporting lines between the different structures are still unclear. Decision-making mechanisms are also still unclear. But also, if you look at the board composition itself, you have not all members are on the same page when it comes to the global conflicts that perhaps the board envisions to deal with. You've got different approaches and different strategic way of thinking about Ukraine, about Greenland, about Gaza. So there's no unanimity in terms of one approach. On that, I just want to kind of like add one thing about just what my colleague said here. I think it's a bit premature to say that the board is going to replace the UN. There's a very restricted membership in the board. It still hasn't been tested. Also, the UN is much more established, has been there for a longer time. So let's see how that works. I mean, it's going to be tested on the ground with Gaza. Let's see how it goes.
Tom, Zizette just mentioned the decision-making process, that we don't know too much about it. But my reading of the Charter and everything we've heard from the man himself, it seems that what President Trump says will go.
Certainly seems that way. He wants to be the executor until he is at a point where he is incapacitated. So that infers he wants this thing to carry on for a while. Memberships, as I have been reading, are 3 years in duration unless you are a quote unquote permanent member, in which case, to be a permanent member, you have to coin up at least $1 billion to be in that club.
Do we know where that money goes?
Well, I guess, we would imagine. Remember thinking back months and months when Trump rolled out those pictures of saying this is going to be the new Riviera in the Eastern Mediterranean, and we all were scratching our heads, right? Well, I think this is kind of in the back of his mind. He wants to start with Ramallah and then, after 3 years, fix that part of Gaza and go on and do other parts of the north. So yes, it's going to take some time, but it is a blank canvas right now. There is some maybe scope for some optimism and equal measure pessimism as well. So, we're on the bus. We're not in the driver's seat. We are along for the ride, and we're going to have to see how this thing progresses, not only in the months to come, but in the years to come.
So all these countries that have signed up, they're just passengers and Trump is driving this.
Oh, yeah. He's calling the shots. He definitely is. I think the initial shortlist was 62 countries he wanted at this stage. We'll call it 61 because he had gotten a spat with Mark Carney of Canada and says, the invite is being pulled for you. You're a naughty boy. You're talking to China. We talked about with Greenland. So yes, different issues impacting upon this body seen in different lenses in different parts of the world. So yes, very complex. I think the bottom line for him, though, is a shortcut. The UN, as you well know, well established, but it can be frustrating. It can be slow. It can be bureaucratic. He wants to find a fast track to solutions, a pragmatic approach that we've seen in his presidency.
Thanks, Tom. Shahid, to you, many people would say, how can an American president be an honest broker in this when the United States has supplied so much weaponry and money to Israel to destroy Gaza in the first place?
Well, thank you for that question. The reality is that, and I would have to say that I don't think that this is just a Trump project as much as it is the fact that after the genocide in Gaza, there was a no point of return and a no point of return for the post-World War II order in the sense that all violations were committed directly on live stream television. And I'm not saying that the world really cares about that. However, then after crossing that line, everything became much more all right. It was a right to live in the rules of the jungle. So there is the bigger question of whether or not the post-World War II order is tectonically changing. And the alliance that Trump is building, I believe, is one that is ideologically aligned in a very hyper neoliberal world order that treats global governance as if it was corporate governance. So the US's involvement in this genocide is as close as also all of the other European allies. Frankly, a huge part of the world has a role to have played in that supply chain, and it does open an existential question for how we run the whole world, really. And the fact that the US is there, it's not that anyone would think of the US as a good faith actor in this. It is, by definition, in legal terms, an enemy of the Palestinian people that is complicit in their own genocide. So to believe that the US at any point would have an interest in safeguarding the Palestinian people's right of self-determination is but a very willful illusion that no one should accept or take on forward. The reality is that what the US is imposing is a new form of occupation that scholars like Stern would call this vulture colonialism, wherein this new form is just given the veil of corporations and investments. However, at the end of the day, it really does the same thing, which is just dehumanize and deny the Palestinians their right to live on their own land. However, Palestine remains a microcosm in this larger shift, as we saw from Venezuela, as Greenland, and most likely a lot of new states, and the DRC, which not a lot of people are speaking about, is that is that very big shift where even us as lawyers are no longer able to rely on tactics of the law and have to invoke something that is quite different, because diplomatics really are no longer interested in hearing our international legal argumentations.
Thanks, Shahid. Zizette, to you, talk to me about the European leaders. Some are on board with this and others have run quite fast away from it. So the United Kingdom won't get involved, Keir Starmer says, because of President Putin and Russia being invited in. We've also seen Norway, Sweden, Italy, France. There's quite a reluctance among very big European countries.
There is reluctance. So some European countries came out and said, we are not joining, like France, like Sweden, Slovenia as well. Others said, we are not joining, but I think there was a yet. There's a yet there that they are still considering their options, because the incentive to join as well has to do a lot with bilateral relations with President Trump as well, and with their concerns of upsetting President Trump. However, the European countries that didn't join made it clear that there is a risk of undermining international law, a risk of undermining the UN, and these countries are very committed to these principles. There's also Italy, for example, said that it's not joining yet because it might be contradiction with its constitution, because Italy can join multilateral bodies only if Italy is on the same footing in terms of decision making, while in the Board of Peace, President Trump seems to have much more say than others. So it's still considering. I actually can see Italy joining the board at some point, given the close relationship between Meloni and President Trump. So some countries are, let's wait and see. But also the European countries have a little bit of a different take than President Trump when it comes to Gaza as well. And for example, most of them see that the Palestinian Authority has to have a role in Gaza. The idea for now, the PA is not, the Palestinian Authority is not involved. So there are different considerations as well that they take into account that the Americans don't. But I wouldn't take it for now as a rejection. I think there is no ... yet. There might be we might see some European countries actually joining.
Thank you. Tom, there are two leaders who have been invited to join the board who many people allege are war criminals. You've got Vladimir Putin of Russia and Benjamin Netanyahu of Israel. Many people feel it's unpalatable that these men could have any say in something like a board of peace.
I think we were all surprised to see that, but of course, the declaration being made in Davos and saying, I'm going to get Putin on this, I'm going to get Netanyahu on this board, and he is just saying, if you don't like it, lump it. It is really in your face. And as we were talking about, it is such a diametrically different approach to what we're used to. The rules-based, again, world of the past, 80 years. And it is very much if you will, an off-ramp into something very, very different. And that is, for many of the European countries, that is pretty scary. They're going, we know that this is an imperfect, if you will, approach to UN, but it's what we're familiar with. It's what we're used to. Look at the largest countries in Europe. They are, for the most part, tied in with the globalist mindset in Davos. And basically, through his Commerce Secretary, through his Treasury Secretary, through Trump himself, saying, the new kid is in town, and this is how things are going to be. And if you don't like it, you don't have any choice right here, right now. So yeah, it is a very different world we're living in right now.
Shahid, just come in on the fact that Netanyahu was invited to join. Every country's been asked to chip in $1 billion US. I really can't see Israel putting that amount of cash into anything to help Gaza. Can you?
Well, the thing is, the Board of Peace is understood to have a more broad world-making role. So if Israel is to see that, then it would be willing. And also, the main reason why Israel still has a functional economy is because of the US printed dollars that keep on funding its own economy through debt. And as long as the US keeps that pipeline running, then Israel will not face any problems. They've actually managed to get a good amount of money in through the past 3 years through a huge amount of atrocity propaganda, as well as honing in on investors that really like the dollar. However, the fact that a war criminal and a man who's accused of orchestrating a genocide is on this board tells us that whatever this board is a board that does not care about any principles, or tries to, let's say, provide any moral superiority for itself that is seeable. It doesn't try to do what the UN tried to do, in the sense that we all have this universal framework. It simply says that peace and security is whatever is in the service of the United States of America.
Thank you. Zizette, just come in on that figure of $1 billion to join. Where did he pluck that from, and where does the money go? I mean, there's so much about this we just don't know.
Let me just clarify that the membership, we asked for the $1 billion buys you a permanent membership, because the current membership is 3 years.
Yeah.
And if I've read the charter correctly, I think those who don't pay will not have a vote.
Okay.
There's something to do with like not paying, not voting. But anyway, there are lots of details that still need to be understood. So I see that as the pay-to-play that has been used by President Trump in different schemes in the US is being implemented. There's a pay-to-play, and there's America first, or America on top, actually, in this scenario. Look, there is a very heavy presence. If you look at the executive boards that are also derived from the Board of Peace, there's a heavy US presence, there's a heavy businessman presence as well. So there is this transactional approach to peace, basically, to peacemaking, to whatever the board is trying to do. And the money is an indication of how strong the whole transactional approach to what the board is going to do is inherited in the charter.
So, Tom, we know he is the art of the deal personified. Oh, yeah. It's all about the money. Just tell me, how has this been received in the United States?
You know, it's probably not the lead item in the Washington Post or the New York Times. They really aren't as focused on it, maybe, as we are here in London or in the Middle East. But they are watching it very, very closely. It raises a number of hosts of questions. The day after Trump is no longer the head of this board, if the board does in fact continue, what does that look like? What are the checks and balances? And all of that has not been fleshed out at all. So there really are a host of questions here. Are we transitioning away from the UN? Will this be a historical footnote? Or decades from now, we can look back and say, yeah, something was tried for 3 years, it failed, and the UN is still the top dog internationally. We don't know it.
Shahed, to you, I just want to put one name into the mix and get your reaction. The former British Prime Minister, Tony Blair, has been invited to get involved with the executive board. Just give us your take on his involvement.
Well, I have no idea who thought of the brilliant idea to resurrect Tony Blair after we thought that nightmare is over. And the only signifiers that I could think of in the minds of all Arabs and all people in the region are simply that of yet another war criminal. So it looks to us like the League of War Criminals United coming in. And with that, it really also signals something quite very important, which is the weakness of the framework, as it lacks any attempt to legitimize itself in front of the masses of the world or the majority of the world. With someone like Tony Blair, who's been repeatedly seen as one of the masterminds of the war in Iraq, and after the world knows very clearly, without any doubt, what happened in the war in Iraq, to bring that back as a figure is also a sign that you are not very clear about how are you to legitimize this framework? How is it that you'd be able to get others to agree with you, aside from the mere use of coercion, be either economic or physical coercion through the use of weapons?
Zizette, as we near the end of the conversation, do you think Trump will fancy his chances of eventually getting a Nobel Peace Prize if this peace board actually achieves anything?
Although he seems like he has given up, he says that he's no more interested. I think he still pursues it, yes. But since we're till the end of it, I would like to just kind of also, we should not ignore the other structures that derive from the Board of Peace. We've discussed about the Board of Peace, but there's also the executive boards for Gaza that has people on it, 11 people on it, that also have UN affiliation or worked in the UN, and like Sigrid Kaag, like Mr. Nikolai Mladenov. And I'm not optimistic, but I'm hopeful that perhaps having people like of their caliber on the board might actually, there is still a chance to steer a little bit as long as it comes to Gaza, at least for Gaza. I'm not talking about other conflicts, but at least that there might be some work that can be done that would benefit Gazans on the ground. Of course, the ultimate test is to see what happens. I mean, we have a big test coming on Thursday, whether Rafah is going to be open. It's going to open, whether the National Committee is going to be allowed into Gaza or not. We're going to see what happens with the Israeli withdrawal. We're going to see what happens. The different tests that we will see, whether the executive board or the National Committee are actually going to have some kind of teeth to kind of go ahead and implement things on the ground. So let's wait and see. And let's kind of, while the discussion about the Board of Peace is fascinating in itself, but there are also other structures that flow from it that might have a different story there and a different way forward than the Board of Peace itself.
Tom, we'll keep across it. My thanks to you, Zizette, and Shahed Hamouri as well. Remember, you can see more discussion and debate on our YouTube channel. Just search for Roundtable TRT World. But for now, from me, Enda Brady, and all the team here, goodbye, and thank you for watching.